The suburban streets were eerily quiet as I drove home, the hum of my car's engine the only sound breaking the stillness. It had been a long shift at work, and my eyes felt heavy, my mind foggy. The streetlights cast long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist as I passed, and the occasional flicker of a porch light was the only sign of life in the neighbourhood. That's when I noticed Ita car behind me, its headlights glaring in my rearview mirror. It had been there for a while, I realised, following me through every turn. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. It's just someone heading home, I told myself. You're being paranoid. But the unease lingered, a knot tightening in my stomach. When I turned onto my street, the car followed. My heart raced as I pulled into my driveway, fumbling with my keys. I glanced back, but the car was gone, vanished into the night as if it had never been there. I let out a shaky breath, chiding myself for overreacting. Inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, trying to calm my nerves. That's when I heard Ita faint tap, tap, tap on the window. My blood ran cold. I froze, straining to listen. The sound came again, this time from the back door. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed the police. They arrived quickly, but after a thorough search they found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just my imagination, they said. I tried to believe them. Over the next few days the unease grew. My car door was left open one morning, though I was certain I'd locked it. My belongings a hairbrush, a notebook were moved, just slightly, as if someone had been rifling through them. Then came the phone calls, always in the dead of night, always silent. I'd answer to nothing but heavy breathing, then a click. I confided in my friend Sarah during one of our late-night calls. "You need to get out of there," she urged. "Come stay with me." But I couldn't shake the feeling that leaving would only make it worse. Whatever was doing this would follow me. The final straw came one night when I woke to the sound of my car alarm blaring. I rushed to the window, my heart pounding. There, standing beside my car, was a shadowy figure. It was tall, its features obscured, but I could feel its gaze on me. I screamed, and it vanished into the darkness. The next morning, I packed my bags and left. I moved across the country, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. For a while, it worked. Life returned to normal, and the memories of that time faded. But years later, on an ordinary Tuesday, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside were items from my old Homier photo of me, a keychain I'd lost, and a note written in jagged, unfamiliar handwriting. I never left. The house was supposed to be a fresh start. After the divorce, I needed a place where my daughter, Lily, and I could rebuild our lives. The small, old house in the quiet rural town seemed perfect cosy, affordable, and far enough from the city to feel like a new beginning. The real estate agent had mentioned something about the attic being unused, but I didn't think much of it at the time. The first few days were uneventful. Lily, my bright-eyed 6-year-old, loved her new room and spent hours exploring the backyard. But by the end of the first week, things began to change. It started with the whispers. At first, they were faint, almost imperceptible, like the rustle of leaves or the creak of an old house settling. I told myself it was the wind or my imagination, but the whispers grew louder, more distinct, as if someone was murmuring just out of earshot. They always seemed to come from the attic. Lily was the next to change. She started talking about her new friend, Mr. Hollow. At first, I thought it was just an imaginary friend, something harmless. But then she began describing him in detail. Tall, shadowy figure with a wide-brimmed hat and eyes that glowed like fireflies. She said he lived in the attic and liked to play games with her. I tried to brush it off, but Lily's behaviour became increasingly unsettling. She started sleepwalking, wandering the house at night. I'd find her standing in the hallway, staring at the ceiling or sitting at the foot of the attic stairs, whispering to herself. Her drawings, once filled with rainbows and smiling animals, turned dark, crude sketches of a tall figure looming over a small child, scribbled in black and red crayon. The nosy neighbour, Mrs. Grayson, didn't help. She stopped by one afternoon, her eyes darting nervously toward the attic window. "You know, this house has a history," she said, her voice low. "The family who lived here before, they disappeared. No one ever found out what happened to them." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I tried to stay rational. "Old houses have stories," I said, forcing a smile. "It's probably just a rumour." But that night, the whispers turned into thumps. Loud, deliberate thumps that shook the ceiling. My heart raced as I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the creaky stairs to the attic. The air was thick with dust, and the beam of my flashlight revealed nothing but an old, weathered trunk in the corner. I opened it, my hands trembling. Inside was a child's toy porcelain doll with cracked, faded features and a photograph. The photo showed a family, their faces torn away, but the words scrawled on the back were clear. "Help us." I slammed the trunk shut and hurried downstairs, my mind racing. The next morning, I called a real estate agent and started looking for a new place. But that night, I woke to find Lily's bed empty. Panic surged through me as I followed the sound of her voice to the attic. She was standing in the centre of the room, staring at the wall, whispering to Mr. Hollow. Her voice was low and guttural, nothing like her own. "Lily," I screamed, grabbing her and pulling her away. She didn't resist, but her eyes were vacant, her skin ice cold. We moved out the next day. I never told anyone what happened, not even the real estate agent. Years later, I stumbled across an old newspaper article about the house. The family who had lived there, a couple, and their young daughter had vanished without a trace. Their bodies were never found. Sometimes late at night, I still hear the whispers. And I wonder if Mr. Hollow is still waiting, looking for a new friend to play with. The motel was the kind of place people only stopped at when they had no other choice. Tucked away on a deserted stretch of highway, its flickering neon sign buzzed faintly against the night sky, promising vacancy to anyone desperate enough to pull in. For Alex, a college student working the night shift to pay for tuition, it was just a jober, quiet, uneventful way to make ends meet. That's what they thought, at least. The storm rolled in around midnight, cutting the power and plunging the motel into darkness. The backup generator kicked on, but it only lit the lobby, leaving the long hallway of rooms shrouded in shadow. Alex sat behind the front desk, the glow of their laptop screen casting eerie shadows on the walls. The manager had left hours ago, leaving them alone for the night. The first knock came just after 1 a.m. Alex jumped, their heart pounding as they turned toward the lobby door. No one was there. They peered through the glass, but the parking lot was empty, the rain pouring down in sheets. "Probably the wind," they muttered, trying to shake off the unease. But the knocks kept coming soft at first, then louder, more insistent. Each time Alex checked, there was no one there. Then came the footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing down the darkened hallway. They sounded like they were coming from room 13. The manager had been clear about room 13. Never open it. Never go inside. Alex had laughed it off at the time, thinking it was just some old superstition. But now, with the storm raging outside and the motel feeling more like a tomb, the warning didn't seem so funny. The crying started next, faint, muffled sobs drifting from room 13. Alex tried to ignore it, burying themselves in their work, but the sound was impossible to block out. It was the kind of crying that made your chest ache, the kind that sounded desperate. Curiosity got the better of them. Grabbing the master key and a flashlight, Alex crept down the hallway, their footsteps swallowed by the thick carpet. The door to room 13 loomed ahead, its number crooked and faded. The key turned with a loud click. The room was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no luggage, not even a stray hair on the floor, but on the bed sat an old leather-bound journal. Alex picked it up, their hands trembling as they flipped through the pages. The entries were all the salmon-notes from previous night shift workers, each describing the same strange occurrences: knocks, footsteps, crying, and at the end of every entry, the same chilling words: "Don't let them in." Alex's breath caught in their throat as they reached the last page. It was blank, except for a single sentence scrawled in fresh ink. "You shouldn't have opened the door." A cold gust of wind slammed the door shut behind them. Alex fumbled with the key, locking the room and sprinting back to the lobby. Their mind raced as they tried to make sense of what they'd seen. The lobby door wouldn't open. Alex yanked on the handle, but it was stuck. The generator sputtered, the lights flickering as a low whisper filled the air. "Let us in." The voice was soft, almost pleading, but it sent a wave of terror through Alex's body. They turned, pressing their back against the door as shadows began to move in the darkened hallway. Shapes flickered in the corners of their vision, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Let us in." Alex's hand brushed against the journal they'd left on the desk. They opened it, their heart sinking as they saw a new entry written in their own handwriting. "I let them in." The lights went out. The next night, a new worker arrived for their shift. The manager handed them the keys, warning them about room 13. The worker laughed it off, just as Alex had. But as they sat behind the desk, the storm rolling in once more, they noticed an old journal sitting on the counter. They flipped through the pages, their smile fading as they reached the last entry. It was written in a shaky hand, the ink still fresh. "I let them in," and somewhere in the darkness, a door creaked open.